The boardroom stank of burnt metal and shattered dreams. A $2 million hypercar sat dead on stage, smoke pouring from its engine while 300 witnesses watched a CEO's career implode. "Fix this in 10 minutes and I'll marry you," she'd laughed, pointing at the janitor. Nobody was laughing now. The mechanic had done the impossible, and he wasn't finished. Follow my story to the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The fluorescent lights in the maintenance bay flickered like dying stars, casting harsh shadows across oil-stained concrete. Marcus Chen wiped his hands on a rag that had seen better days, the kind of methodical motion that came from 20 years of working with engines. At 38, he looked older. Grief had a way of adding years that birthdays couldn't account for. "Daddy, you're going to be late again." Emma stood in the doorway of Apex Automotive's employee break room, her 10-year-old frame dwarfed by the industrial setting. She held his lunch, a sandwich wrapped in recycled aluminum foil, an apple that had seen better days, and a thermos of coffee that would be cold by noon. "I know, sweetheart, just finishing up the tool inventory." Marcus looked at his daughter and saw her mother's eyes staring back. Linda had been gone for 4 years now, taken by a heart condition that no amount of mechanical knowledge could fix. The medical bills had taken everything else, their house, their savings, the small repair shop they'd built together. Now it was just him and Emma, living in a 2-bedroom apartment where the radiator clanged like a ghost, and the rent was always due yesterday. "Mrs. Rodriguez says she can watch me after school, but only until 6, Emma said, shifting her weight from foot to foot. "She has bingo tonight. I'll be there by 5:30, promise." Emma's expression suggested she'd heard that promise before. She walked over and hugged him, careful not to get motor oil on her school uniform, a hand-me-down from the Rodriguez kids that was still too big for her slight frame. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you more, Em." She pulled something from her pocket, a small titanium wrench no bigger than her palm. She'd saved for 3 months collecting cans and doing odd jobs for neighbors to buy it from a specialty tool shop. On the handle, barely visible unless you knew where to look, was an engraving, "Dad's Magic." "For luck," she said. "Today's important." "Right?" The big car show. Marcus took the wrench, feeling its surprising weight. Quality tools had substance to them, and despite its size, this was a quality tool. He slipped it into his breast pocket right over his heart. "Just another day of cleaning up after the real mechanics," he said, trying to keep the bitterness out of his voice. Emma frowned. "You are a real mechanic. The best one. Mom always said so." After Emma left for school, Marcus returned to his duties. Apex Automotive wasn't just any car company. It was the Tesla killer, the Ferrari Challenger, the startup that had burned through $200 million in venture capital to create the Apex Zenith, a hypercar that promised to redefine what electric performance meant. And Marcus was the guy who mopped the floors where the Zenith was built. The demotion from mechanic to janitor hadn't been official. After Linda's death, when he'd missed too many shifts sitting in hospital waiting rooms, then funeral homes, then lawyers' offices, Apex had offered him a choice: take a maintenance position or take nothing at all. With Emma to feed and no other options, he'd swallowed his pride and accepted. "Hey, Chen, you done daydreaming?" Derek Morrison, Apex's lead engineer, stood in the doorway of the maintenance bay. MIT graduate, 30 years old, and possessed of the kind of arrogance that came from never having failed at anything that mattered. His team of 12 engineers, all Ivy League, all young, all certain of their brilliance, treated Marcus like furniture, useful when needed, invisible otherwise. "Just finishing the tool inventory, Mr. Morrison." "Good. We need the main floor spotless for today's reveal. This is our IPO launch. Everything has to be perfect. And Chen?" Derek's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Try not to touch anything important. We can't afford any complications." Marcus nodded, biting back the response that wanted to escape. Derek didn't wait for an answer, already walking away, probably to his morning meeting where they'd discuss engineering solutions Marcus could solve in his sleep. As Derek disappeared around the corner, Marcus couldn't help himself. He walked over to the engineering station where the Zenith's blueprints were displayed on massive screens. The car was beautiful, he had to admit. Sleek lines that seemed to defy physics. A powertrain that promised 1,000 horsepower, a price tag that started at $2 million. But something was wrong. Marcus had been looking at engines since he was Emma's age, working in his father's shop in Detroit before the factories closed, before the city forgot what made it great. He'd rebuilt his first engine at 12, designed his first modification at 15, and by 25, he and Linda had been running one of the most respected independent shops in Michigan. The cooling system routing on the Zenith was completely fucked. Marcus studied the design more carefully, his trained eye catching what 12 Ivy League engineers had missed. The coolant lines ran too close to the primary battery pack. Under normal conditions, it might be fine. But under stress, the kind of stress that came from showing off a hypercar to potential investors, the heat buildup would be catastrophic. The batteries would overheat. The safety systems would cascade fail, and the $2 million masterpiece would become a $2 million paperweight. Or worse, a $2 million fireball. Admiring your better's work. Marcus turned to find Victoria Sterling standing behind him. At 32, she was Apex's youngest CEO in the automotive industry, a wonder kid who'd graduated Stanford at 19 Harvard Business School at 21 and had graced the cover of Forbes' Fortune and Wired all in the same year. She was brilliant, beautiful, and utterly ruthless. The kind of person who saw other humans as either useful tools or obstacles to be removed. Today she wore a crimson dress that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. Her blonde hair pulled back in a style that managed to be both professional and somehow predatory. Her smile reminded Marcus of a shark's all-surface charm, hiding rows of teeth. Just checking if there's anything that needs cleaning, Ms. Sterling. Good. Know your place, Chen. Some of us build the future. Others, she looked him up and down, taking in his stained coveralls and calloused hands, others clean up after us. She started to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Chen. My assistant mentioned you have a daughter. Emma, right? Bright girl, according to her teachers. Shame she'll probably end up like her father, all that potential wasted on mediocrity. The rage that flashed through Marcus was volcanic. His fists clenched, knuckles white, but he forced himself to remain still. Victoria had already destroyed 3 employees who dared to challenge her. Marcus couldn't afford to be the 4th. Ms. Sterling, he said, his voice carefully controlled. About the Zenith's cooling system. Victoria's laugh was like breaking glass. The janitor wants to discuss engineering. How precious. Tell me, Chen, where did you get your degree, YouTube University? I ran my own shop for 10 years. I know engines and this one. Stop. Victoria's voice went from mocking to ice cold in an instant. You're embarrassing yourself. Our engineers have doctorates from the best schools in the world. You have a mop. Stay in your lane. The cooling lines are routed wrong. If you run this car hard, it's going to... Security. Victoria didn't raise her voice, but 2 guards appeared as if summoned from thin air. Mr. Chen seems to have forgotten his job description. Please remind him where the cleaning supplies are kept. As the guards escorted him away, Marcus heard Victoria addressing the engineering team that had gathered to watch the spectacle. This is what happens when we're too charitable with our hiring practices. We give someone a chance to feed their family, and they think they're equals. Remember, people, there are those who create and those who clean. Never confuse the two. The laughter that followed Marcus down the hall was cruel and unanimous. That night, Marcus sat at his kitchen table. Emma's homework spread out before them. She was working on a science project about simple machines, and the irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was a man who understood complex machines better than most, reduced to explaining levers and pulleys, while brilliant idiots prepared to humiliate themselves tomorrow. Daddy, why do you look sad? Marcus forced a smile. Just tired, Em. Long day. Emma put down her pencil and looked at him with those 2 wise eyes. The kids at school say you're just a janitor now, that you used to be important, but now you're not. The words hit like physical blows. Marcus reached across the table and took his daughter's hands. Emma, listen to me. There's no such thing as just anything. Every job matters. Every person matters. The people who think otherwise, they're the ones who are missing something important. But you could do so much more. I know you could. Remember when you fixed Mr. Rodriguez's car? He said 3 mechanics told him it couldn't be done, but you did it in an afternoon. Marcus squeezed her hands gently. Sometimes life doesn't give you the chances you deserve. Sometimes you have to take what you can get and make the best of it. Emma pulled her hands free and crossed her arms. Mom wouldn't have wanted you to give up. The words hung in the air between them, truth shaped like a knife. Linda wouldn't have wanted this. She'd have been furious to see him accepting disrespect, swallowing insults, letting people like Victoria Sterling treat him as less than human. But Linda wasn't here. Linda was in a cemetery on the other side of town, and Marcus was alone with a daughter to raise and bills that never stopped coming. I'm not giving up, he said quietly. I'm surviving. For you. Emma's expression softened. She got up and hugged him, and Marcus held her tight, remembering when she was small enough to carry when Linda was still alive, when they'd had a future instead of just a daily struggle to make it through. Will you go to the big car show tomorrow? Emma asked. I have to. It's mandatory for all employees. Maybe something good will happen. Maybe they'll see how smart you are. Marcus thought about the flawed cooling system, about Victoria's mockery, about Derek's dismissal. Tomorrow Apex would reveal the zenith to the world, 300 investors, dozens of journalists live-streamed to millions. And when that car inevitably failed, it would be spectacular. Maybe, he said, not wanting to destroy his daughter's optimism. Maybe something will happen. The next morning came too soon, and not soon enough. Marcus arrived at Apex at 6 a.m., 3 hours before the event, to help with final preparations. The main showroom had been transformed into something between a theater and a temple to automotive excess. Black marble floors reflected strategic spotlights, creating an atmosphere of drama and anticipation. Banners hung from the ceiling proclaiming, "The future drives itself," and "Zenith, where impossible becomes inevitable." The irony of that second banner would become apparent soon enough. Marcus was assigned to the backstage area, managing cleaning supplies and staying out of sight. Through a gap in the curtains, he watched as the room filled with Silicon Valley's elite. Venture capitalists worth billions, tech bloggers, whose opinions could make or break companies, automotive journalists, who'd seen everything and remained unimpressed by most of it. They were all here for Victoria's triumph. She commanded the preparation like a general before battle, every detail scrutinized, every angle calculated. The Zenith sat under a custom cover waiting for its moment. Marcus could see it from his position, beautiful and doomed, a $2 million disaster waiting to happen. He tried one more time that morning, approaching Derek with his concerns. Mr. Morrison, please just look at the cooling system routing for 5 minutes. Chen, I'm going to say this once. Derek had replied, not even looking up from his tablet. You're a janitor. I have a PhD from MIT. The 12 engineers on my team have enough degrees to paper your apartment. We've run every simulation, every test, every possible scenario. The Zenith is perfect. Your opinion is neither wanted nor needed. Now go clean something. So Marcus had retreated Emma's titanium wrench in his pocket and waited for the inevitable. At exactly 9 a.m., the lights dimmed. Music, something electronic and aggressive, filled the space. Victoria Sterling walked onto the stage like she owned not just the room, but the entire world. The spotlight followed her, making her crimson dress seem to glow, her smile bright enough to sell anything to anyone. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice carrying perfect confidence. Today, you witness history. Today, Apex Automotive doesn't just enter the hypercar market, we redefine it. Applause filled the room. Cameras flashed. The live stream viewer count climbed past 1 million. The internal combustion engine is dead. Victoria continued, pacing the stage with practiced precision. Tesla made electric mainstream. We make it magnificent. The Apex Zenith isn't just a car, it's a statement, a declaration that the future belongs to those brave enough to seize it. More applause. Marcus watched from the shadows, noting how the engineering team stood in a self-congratulatory cluster, already counting their stock options. But enough talk, Victoria said, her smile growing wider. Let me show you what 200 million in development and the brightest minds in automotive engineering have created. She pulled a remote from somewhere, probably a pocket hidden in that expensive dress, and pressed a button. The cover lifted from the Zenith with theatrical slowness, revealing the car beneath. Even Marcus, who knew it was doomed, had to admit it was stunning. The body was carbon fiber, so perfectly sculpted it seemed liquid, like someone had frozen a wave of midnight and given it wheels. The doors opened upward like wings, revealing an interior that looked more spaceship than automobile. Every surface, every angle, every detail screamed money and power and technological superiority. The crowd made appropriate noises of appreciation. Phones came out recording every angle. The automotive journalists, usually cynical, leaned forward with genuine interest. 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds, Victoria announced, circling the car like a predator showing off its kill. Top speed of 284 miles per hour, 1,000 horsepower from our proprietary battery system, and a range of 500 miles because what good is performance if you can't enjoy it? She opened the driver's door and slid inside with practiced grace, making sure the cameras caught her best angle. The interior lit up displays coming alive with graphics that probably cost more to develop than most people's houses. But specifications are just numbers, Victoria said through the car's external speakers. Let me show you what the future sounds like. She pressed the start button. For 30 seconds, everything was perfect. The Zenith purred to life with a sound that was both mechanical and somehow organic, like a great beast waking from slumber. The displays showed optimal readings across every system. Victoria revved the engine gently, and the sound that filled the showroom was automotive pornography power, refined to its essence. Then Marcus heard it. A slight whine from the cooling system, barely audible unless you knew what to listen for. He'd heard that sound 1,000 times in his shop, always right before the engine note changed. The smooth purr became a grinding complaint. Warning lights started flashing on the dashboard first. 1, then 3, then what looked like all of them. Victoria's perfect smile faltered. She pressed the accelerator trying to power through whatever was happening, but that only made it worse. The whine became a shriek. Then came the smoke. Black, acrid smoke poured from the front of the car where the battery pack was housed. The smell of burning electronics and melting plastic filled the showroom. The Zenith's computers, overwhelmed by cascading system failures, did the only thing they could do: they shut down everything. The $2 million hypercar died on stage in front of 300 witnesses and over 2 million live stream viewers. The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria sat in the dead car, her face cycling through emotions: shock, rage, humiliation, desperation. Camera flashes exploded around her, but now they were documenting failure, not triumph. Derek and his engineering team rushed onto the stage, tablets and diagnostic equipment in hand. They swarmed the Zenith like ants on a corpse, checking connections, running diagnostics, trying everything their expensive educations had taught them. Nothing worked. "It must be sabotage," Derek announced desperately. "Someone hacked our systems." "Could be a supply chain attack," another engineer suggested. "Compromised components from overseas." They were grasping at complex explanations for a simple problem, their education having taught them to overthink rather than observe. Marcus watched from his position, Emma's wrench heavy in his pocket, and felt a grim satisfaction. He'd tried to warn them. They'd chosen not to listen. Victoria finally emerged from the car, her perfect composure cracking like ice in spring. The investors were already on their phones, probably calling their lawyers. The journalists were typing furiously, their headlines writing themselves. The live stream chat had become a waterfall of mockery and memes. That's when Victoria's eyes found Marcus. He was standing in the backstage area, visible through the gap in the curtains. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Victoria Sterling made a decision that would define both their futures. Instead of accepting responsibility, instead of acknowledging failure, she would deflect by creating a spectacle. "You know what?" she said, her voice carrying through her wireless microphone, still active from the presentation. "This is supposed to be the most advanced car ever built. My engineers all have degrees from the best schools in the world." She pointed directly at Marcus. "If that maintenance worker over there, the one who cleans our toilets and empties our trash, if he can fix what our experts can't, I'll marry him on the spot." The laughter that erupted was cruel and immediate. The tension of the failed reveal broke as everyone turned to look at the janitor in dirty coveralls. Phones swiveled to record this new entertainment. "Seriously," Victoria continued, feeding off the crowd's energy. "Our janitor versus a $2 million hypercar. I'll give him 10 minutes. If he can fix it, I'll not only marry him, I'll make him CEO." More laughter. Derek and his team joined in, grateful for the distraction from their failure. "Come on, Chen," Derek called out. "Show us what YouTube University taught you." Maybe he'll try unplugging it and plugging it back in, someone shouted. $10,000 says he doesn't even know how to open the hood, another voice added. Marcus stood frozen, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes and dozens of cameras. His face burned with familiar humiliation, the same feeling he'd carried for months, as he'd been reduced from mechanic to janitor, from someone who mattered to someone invisible. But then he felt Emma's wrench in his pocket, thought about her face that morning, the pride in her eyes when she'd called him the best mechanic, thought about Linda, who'd always believed in him, who'd have been furious to see him accepting this treatment. And Marcus Chen made a decision. He pulled off his work gloves and walked onto the stage. The laughter grew louder as he approached the smoking zenith. Someone started a slow clap that others joined mockingly. Victoria sat on the car's hood, her crimson dress spread artfully, playing to the cameras that were eating up this David versus Goliath moment, if David had been a janitor and Goliath a machine. "Clock starts now," Victoria announced, pulling out her phone with theatrical flair. 10 minutes for our minimum wage hero to save my maximum price disaster. Marcus ignored her. Ignored the laughter, the cameras, the running commentary from the crowd. He popped the hood and immediately saw what he'd known he would see. The cooling lines had failed exactly where he'd predicted, causing thermal runaway in the battery pack. The cascade failure had triggered every safety system, shutting down the car's computers in a desperate attempt to prevent fire or explosion. He pulled out his personal toolkit. Nothing fancy, just the basics he'd carried for 20 years. The same tools that had built his reputation in Detroit, that had kept Linda's faith in him, that had fixed countless unfixable problems. His hands moved with the confidence of experience. First, he had to isolate the damaged cooling section to prevent further thermal damage. The engineers had made it complicated, but Marcus had always believed the best solutions were simple ones. "Look at him go," Derek said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe we should check if he's got a degree from Jiffy Lube." More laughter, but Marcus noticed it was becoming less certain. His movements were too confident, too precise. This wasn't guesswork, this was expertise. He located the primary cooling line failure and quickly rerouted the system, bypassing the damaged section. It was a temporary fix, but it would work. Next, he had to reset the battery management system, which had gone into full protective shutdown. The engineers had installed so many safety protocols that they'd actually made the system less safe, a common problem with overthinking. 5 minutes, Victoria announced. Though Marcus could see on her phone it had only been 3. He didn't correct her. He was focused on the problem hands moving with the muscle memory of thousands of hours spent under hoods. Disconnect the battery pack's thermal sensors, reset the management system. Reconnect with the backup cooling route engaged. Simple steps that the 12 PhD engineers had been too educated to see. The crowd had grown quieter. The mockery was fading, replaced by genuine interest. Was the janitor actually fixing it? Marcus made the final connections and closed the hood. He wiped his hands on his coveralls, a gesture so familiar he didn't even think about it, and looked at Victoria. "Try it now." She slid back into the driver's seat. Her confidence evaporated. She pressed the start button. The Zenith roared to life. Not just started roared. The engine sound was perfect, powerful, everything it had promised to be. The dashboard showed all green lights. The cooling system hummed efficiently. The $2 million hypercar was fully operational. The showroom went completely silent. Marcus had done it. In less than 5 minutes, with basic tools and simple knowledge, he'd fixed what 12 engineers with their prestigious degrees couldn't even diagnose. But Marcus wasn't finished. He pulled out his phone where he'd photographed the blueprints days ago when he'd first noticed the problem. He held it up so the cameras could see. "The cooling system was designed wrong," he said, his voice carrying in the silence. "The lines run too close to the battery pack. Any engineer with practical experience would have caught it." He swiped to another image emails he'd screenshot after being dismissed. "I tried to warn them 3 days ago. I was told to know my place." The murmur that ran through the crowd was electric. This wasn't just a mechanical failure. This was a safety scandal, a management failure, a complete breakdown of corporate responsibility. "Those are confidential documents," Victoria shrieked, jumping out of the car. "You stole company property." "I documented safety concerns that were ignored," Marcus replied calmly. "When a company puts ego over safety, someone needs to speak up." That's when Richard Blackstone stood up. Blackstone was Apex's largest investor, a billionaire who'd made his fortune by knowing when to hold and when to fold. He commanded the room's attention without saying a word, his presence alone enough to silence the chaos. "Ms. Sterling," his voice was calm but carried lethal authority. "You just demonstrated catastrophic judgment in front of our entire investor base. You ignored safety warnings from an employee regardless of his position and nearly caused a disaster that could have killed someone." "Richard, I can explain. Furthermore," Blackstone continued as if she hadn't spoken, "you attempted to humiliate an employee to deflect from your own failure. That's not leadership, Ms. Sterling. That's cowardice." He turned to address the other board members who were seated in the VIP section. "I'm calling for an immediate vote of no confidence in Victoria Sterling's leadership." The vote was swift and unanimous. In less than 30 seconds, Victoria Sterling went from CEO to unemployed, her fall captured by hundreds of cameras and witnessed by millions online. But the cruelest blow was yet to come. As security moved to escort her from the building, every single Apex employee in the room stood up and walked out. The engineers who'd laughed at Marcus, the executives who'd supported Victoria, the staff who'd stood by while she'd humiliated him, they all abandoned her. She stood alone on the stage next to the car that had destroyed her, facing the cameras that would make her humiliation eternal. Marcus didn't stay to watch. He walked off the stage through the backstage area and out the employee exit. He had to pick up Emma from school. He'd promised to be there by 5:30, and Marcus Chen kept his promises. The video went viral before Marcus even made it to Emma's school. By the time he pulled into the parking lot of Jefferson Elementary in his beat-up Honda Civic, the only thing left from his old life that still worked, his phone had exploded with notifications. He turned it off without looking. Whatever was happening in the digital world could wait. Emma couldn't. She was sitting on the steps outside the main entrance, her backpack beside her, reading a library book about engines. When she saw him, her face lit up with a smile that made everything else irrelevant. "Daddy, Mrs. Rodriguez said something big happened at your work. She saw it on her phone but wouldn't tell me what." Marcus hugged his daughter tight, feeling the weight of the day settling into his bones. "Just some trouble with the car they were showing. Nothing important." Emma pulled back and studied his face with those two knowing eyes. "Did you fix something?" "Yeah, Em, I fixed something." They drove home in comfortable silence. Emma chattering about her science project and how Tommy Williams had tried to copy her homework but got caught because he'd copied her name too. Normal kid stuff. The kind of problems that made sense, that had solutions, that didn't involve corporate humiliation and viral videos. It wasn't until they got home that Marcus realized the extent of what had happened. Their apartment building's parking lot was full of news vans. Reporters clustered around the entrance like vultures around carrion. Someone spotted his car and the cry went up. "There he is! That's Chen!" They swarmed before Marcus could even turn off the engine. Cameras pressed against windows, voices shouting questions, microphones thrust forward like weapons. "Chen, how does it feel to have exposed Apex's safety failures? Did you know the video has 5 million views already? Victoria Sterling hasn't responded to requests for comment. Do you think she should face criminal charges? Is it true you've been offered $1 million for your story?" Emma pressed against his side, frightened by the chaos. Marcus wrapped his arm around her and pushed through the crowd, not answering, not engaging, just protecting his daughter from the madness he'd inadvertently created. Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting by their apartment door, her phone in her hand, her expression somewhere between awe and concern. "Marcus, dear God, what did you do? The whole internet is talking about you." "I just fixed a car, Mrs. Rodriguez." She showed him her phone screen. The video was everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Different angles, different edits, but all showing the same thing. Victoria Sterling mocking him fixing the car, her getting fired, and her standing alone as everyone abandoned her. The hashtags were brutal, # janitor justice, #CEOs janitor, massage my Mary. Him now, but tech bro. Tears. "Daddy," Emma whispered, "are you famous?" "No, sweetheart, just visible for a moment. It'll pass." But it didn't pass. By the next morning, Marcus Chen had become the most famous mechanic in America. His story was everywhere: the widowed father, the fallen entrepreneur, the genius reduced to janitorial work who'd exposed corporate incompetence with nothing but hand tools and courage. The apartment building was surrounded. Marcus couldn't leave without being mobbed. Emma couldn't go to school without reporters following. Their quiet life had exploded into chaos. The phone rang constantly. Movie producers, book publishers, documentary makers, all wanting his story. Job offers poured in from every major automotive company. Tesla's head of engineering left a personal voicemail. Ferrari sent a formal letter offering him a position in Maranello. But the call that changed everything came from Richard Blackstone himself. "Mr. Chen, I owe you an apology and a debt of gratitude. Would you be willing to meet? I have a proposal that might interest you." Marcus agreed, mostly because Blackstone had the power to call off the media circus. They met at a quiet restaurant in Palo Alto, the kind of place where billionaires made deals that shaped the world. Blackstone had reserved the entire establishment. "You saved my investment," Blackstone said without preamble. "If that car had failed after launch, if someone had been hurt, Apex would have faced lawsuits that would have destroyed the company. Your actions, however unintended, prevented a catastrophe. I just wanted them to listen about the safety issue. And they should have, which brings me to my proposal." Blackstone leaned forward. "I'm now Apex's interim chairman. We need a new CEO. Someone with practical knowledge, integrity, and the courage to speak truth to power. The job is yours if you want it." Marcus almost laughed. "Mr. Blackstone, I don't have an MBA. I don't have any degree. I'm a mechanic who barely finished high school." "You're a mechanic who saw what 12 PhDs missed. You're a man who risked humiliation to prevent danger to others. That's the kind of leadership Apex needs. The salary is $2 million per year plus stock options. Full benefits, company car, housing allowance. Your daughter could attend any school she wanted. You'd never have to worry about money again." $2 million a year. Marcus thought about the past 4 years, counting pennies, skipping meals so Emma could eat, wearing the same coveralls until they fell apart. The offer was everything he'd dreamed of when he lay awake at night wondering how he'd pay rent. "I need to think about it." "Of course. But Marcus, may I call you Marcus? There's something else you should know. Victoria Sterling hasn't given up. She's claiming you sabotaged the car yourself, that you created the problem so you could fix it. She's hired the best lawyers in Silicon Valley. She wants to destroy you." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He'd embarrassed one of the most powerful people in tech. Of course there would be consequences. "I have lawyers, too," Blackstone continued. "They'll protect you, but only if you're under Apex's corporate umbrella. As CEO, you'd be untouchable. As a private citizen, well, Victoria has resources and a grudge. Bad combination." That night, Marcus sat with Emma at their small kitchen table, the job offer letter between them. Emma read it with the seriousness of someone much older than 10. $2 million is a lot of money," she said quietly. "It would change our lives, Em. You could go to any school, have anything you wanted. We could buy a house, travel, never worry about money again." Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "Would you be happy?" The question hit harder than any reporter's inquiry. Would he be happy running a company, wearing suits, sitting in board meetings, playing corporate politics? "I'd be successful." "That's not what I asked." Marcus looked at his daughter, this child who'd lost her mother too young, who'd watched her father diminished and dismissed, who still believed in him when no one else did. "What would Mom want?" Emma asked. And there it was. The question that cut through everything. Linda would want him to be true to himself. She'd want him to use his skills, yes, but not to become something he wasn't. "I think," Marcus said slowly, "Mom would want me to find another way." The next morning, he called Blackstone with a counterproposal. "I don't want to be CEO, but I'll accept a position as Chief Safety Officer with real authority to stop production if there are concerns. I want to create a board of practical engineers, people who work with their hands, not just computers. And I want a fund established for workers' kids to get technical education." Blackstone was quiet for a moment. The salary for that position would be significantly less. Maybe $300,000. "That's more than enough." "You're turning down $2 million. I'm choosing to stay who I am." The news of Marcus's decision created almost as much buzz as the original video. The mechanic who'd humiliated a CEO was turning down the CEO job himself. The hot takes came fast and furious. Chen shows corporate America what real integrity looks like. Forbes, the mechanic who said no to millions. Wall Street Journal, why Marcus Chen is the hero we need. Wired. But Victoria Sterling wasn't done. She appeared on a popular tech podcast 3 days after the incident, her first public statement since the humiliation. She'd transformed herself. Gone was the corporate power dresser. Instead, she wore simple clothes, minimal makeup, playing the victim perfectly. "What people don't understand," she said, her voice carefully modulated to sound vulnerable, "is that Marcus Chen had access to those cars for weeks. He could have created the problem himself. Think about it. A disgruntled employee treated badly, seeing a chance for revenge and fame." The interviewer pushed back. "But he tried to warn you about the problem." Did he? Or did he create a paper trail to cover his sabotage? I'm not saying he definitely did it, but isn't it convenient? He fixes a problem only he could see, becomes a hero, gets job offers from everyone. Meanwhile, my life is destroyed. You mocked him publicly, called him a janitor, said you'd marry him if he could fix it. Victoria's eyes actually teared up, a practiced move. I was under incredible stress. The car had failed. My entire career was on the line. I made a poor joke, yes. But did I deserve to lose everything? To become a meme? To have death threats sent to my family? The interview went viral too because the internet loved nothing more than a controversy with two sides. Team Marcus versus Team Victoria became an actual thing. Reddit threads exploded with theories. Twitter warriors chose sides. But the real world had bigger problems. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration opened an investigation into Apex and the Zenith's design. The Securities and Exchange Commission started looking into whether Victoria had misled investors about the car's safety. What had started as a corporate embarrassment was becoming a legal nightmare. Marcus tried to stay out of it. He went to work. His new position came with an actual office and a salary that seemed impossible, and focused on reviewing every Apex design for safety issues. He found 14 major problems in the first week, all of which would have been caught by anyone with practical experience. Emma adjusted to their new life with the resilience of children. They moved to a better apartment, not fancy, but in a neighborhood where the schools were good and the streets were safe. She made friends who didn't know about the video, who just knew her as Emma Chen, the girl who was really good at science. But Victoria Sterling wasn't finished. The lawsuit arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who looked apologetic. Victoria was suing Marcus for defamation, corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She was seeking $50 million in damages. "It's a scare tactic," Blackstone's lawyers assured him. "She has no case. Oh, you reported safety concerns through proper channels. Everything you did was legal and ethical." But legal battles weren't fought with tools Marcus understood. They were fought with words and procedures and billable hours. Victoria had hired Cromwell Ashford and Associates, the kind of law firm that had ended careers and destroyed companies. The deposition was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Marcus would have to sit in a room with Victoria and her lawyers answering questions under oath while they tried to trip him up to make him admit to something, anything, that would support their case. "Don't worry," his lawyer, a sharp woman named Jennifer Park, told him. "Tell the truth. That's all you have to do. The truth is on your side." But Marcus had learned that truth was a flexible concept in corporate America. It could be twisted, recontextualized, weaponized. And Victoria Sterling was a master at manipulation. The night before the deposition, Emma found him in the living room staring at the titanium wrench she'd given him. "Are you scared, Daddy?" "A little," he admitted. "Why, you didn't do anything wrong." "Sometimes that's not enough, Em. Sometimes people with power can make wrong look right, and right look wrong." Emma sat beside him, her small hand finding his. "Remember what you told me about everyone mattering? Every job being important?" "Yeah. You showed everyone that's true. You showed them that a mechanic could see what engineers couldn't. That's why she's really mad. Not because you embarrassed her, but because you proved her wrong about who matters." Marcus hugged his daughter, wondering when she'd become so wise. The deposition took place in a glass tower in downtown San Francisco, the kind of building that scraped the sky and looked down on the world below. Victoria's lawyers had chosen the location deliberately intimidating, imposing a reminder of the power they wielded. Marcus wore his only suit, the one he'd bought for Linda's funeral. It didn't quite fit anymore, but it was clean and pressed. Jennifer Park met him in the lobby. Remember short answers, yes or no when possible. Don't volunteer information. Don't get emotional. They want to rattle you. The conference room was all glass and chrome, with a view of the bay that probably cost more per square foot than Marcus's annual salary. Victoria was already there, flanked by 3 lawyers in suits that cost more than cars. She looked different. The corporate glamour was gone, replaced by something harder, sharper. Her eyes, when they met his, were full of cold fury. "State your name for the record," the lead lawyer, Harrison Cromwell, himself began. "Marcus Chen." "Mr. Chen, you were employed as a maintenance worker at Apex Automotive, correct?" "Yes. Your duties included cleaning, organizing tools, basic janitorial work." "Yes." "You had no official engineering role?" "No." "No responsibility for vehicle design or safety?" "No official responsibility." Cromwell smiled, the expression of a predator sensing weakness. "But you took it upon yourself to review confidential blueprints. They were displayed openly in the engineering bay. Did you have permission to study them?" "I didn't need permission to look at something in plain sight." "Mr. Chen, did you have the authority to assess vehicle designs?" Jennifer objected, but Cromwell pressed on. For 3 hours, he tried every angle, every approach, trying to get Marcus to admit he'd overstepped, that he'd violated company policy, that he'd acted out of revenge or jealousy or greed. Marcus answered simply, truthfully, without elaboration. Yes, he'd seen the blueprints. Yes, he'd identified a safety issue. Yes, he'd tried to report it. No, he hadn't sabotaged anything. No, he hadn't planned the confrontation. Then Victoria's lawyer played the video. Seeing it again in that sterile corporate room was surreal. There was Victoria proud and mocking. There was Marcus walking onto the stage. The fix, the revelation, the humiliation. "Mr. Chen," Cromwell said when it ended, "you seem very calm in this video for someone who was supposedly surprised." "I wasn't surprised the car failed. I knew it would." "So you were prepared?" "I was prepared to be proven right about the safety issue." "And you just happened to have the right tools." "I always carry basic tools." "How convenient," Jennifer objected again. The questioning continued, circling, probing, looking for weakness. But Marcus had spent years diagnosing problems, and he recognized what was happening. They had nothing. This was all theater designed to intimidate him into settling or backing down. Then Victoria herself spoke for the first time. "May I ask a question?" She addressed her lawyer, but her eyes never left Marcus. "Ms. Sterling, that's not typical protocol." "Just one question." Cromwell nodded. Victoria leaned forward. "Why did you really do it?" "Marcus, was it because I didn't recognize your genius? Because I treated you like what you were, a janitor? Or was it because your wife died and left you bitter at the world?" The room went silent. Even Victoria's lawyers looked uncomfortable. Jennifer Park started to object, but Marcus held up his hand. "My wife's death taught me something," he said quietly. "Life's too short to stay quiet when something's wrong. Too short to let bullies win. Too short to pretend that titles and degrees matter more than knowledge and integrity. You want to know why I did it? Because you were going to get someone killed with your arrogance, and I couldn't let that happen. Not for revenge, not for fame, because it was the right thing to do." Victoria's composure cracked. "You destroyed my life." "No. You destroyed your life when you chose to mock someone trying to help. When you chose your ego over safety. When you chose to humiliate rather than listen. I just held up a mirror." "I'll ruin you," Victoria said, her voice low and venomous. "I'll spend every cent I have left making sure you never work again." "Miss Sterling," Cromwell warned, but the damage was done. The court reporter had captured every word. The threat was on record. Jennifer Park smiled. "I think we're done here." As they left the building, Jennifer was practically glowing. "She just handed us a countersuit for harassment and intimidation. That threat on record in front of witnesses. Her lawyers are probably having heart attacks right now. But Marcus wasn't thinking about lawsuits. He was thinking about Victoria's face, the raw hatred there. This wasn't over. She'd lost everything: her job, her reputation, her future, and she blamed him. People like Victoria Sterling didn't just accept defeat, they found ways to strike back. A week later, Marcus discovered what that meant. Emma came home from school crying. Someone had posted flyers around the school with Marcus's picture and the words, "This man destroyed a woman's career for trying to make a joke. Is your parent next?" The flyers included Victoria's version of events, painting Marcus as a vindictive employee who'd planned the whole thing, who'd deliberately humiliated a young female CEO for daring to succeed in a male-dominated industry. Some parents bought it. Emma was uninvited from birthday parties. Playdates were canceled. The Whisper campaign had begun. "Why are they being mean?" Emma asked through tears. "You didn't do anything wrong." Marcus held his daughter fury building in his chest. Going after him was one thing. Going after Emma was another. He called Jennifer Park. "She's targeting my daughter. This has to stop. We can get a restraining order, but proving she's behind the flyers will be difficult. They were posted anonymously." "I don't care about proof. I care about protecting Emma." That night, Marcus made a decision. He called Richard Blackstone. "I need your help. Not as Apex's chairman, but as someone with influence. Victoria's targeting my daughter. It needs to stop." Blackstone was quiet for a moment. "I'll make some calls. Victoria has investors in her new venture. They might be interested to know about her behavior." "What new venture?" "She's starting a competing company. Sterling Motors. Already has $20 million in seed funding." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Victoria wasn't going away. She was rebuilding, and she'd carry her grudge forever. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A group of mechanics and technicians from around the Bay Area showed up at Apex. They wanted to meet Marcus, to shake his hand, to thank him for standing up for workers who actually knew how things worked. "You showed them," an old mechanic named Earl said, gripping Marcus's hand with calloused fingers. "Showed them that all their fancy degrees don't mean shit if they can't turn a wrench." Word spread. More workers came. By noon, there were hundreds of them filling Apex's parking lot. Not protesting, just present. Showing solidarity with one of their own who'd been heard for once. The media noticed. The narrative began to shift from disgruntled employee versus female CEO to working-class hero stands up to corporate arrogance. The flyers at Emma's school were removed. Parents who'd canceled playdates called to apologize. But the sweetest vindication came from an unexpected source. James Morrison, Derek's younger brother and a mechanic at a Toyota dealership, publicly released a recording. On it, Derek could be heard from weeks before the incident dismissing safety concerns about the Zenith. "I don't care if it's not perfect," Derek's voice said clearly. "Victoria wants it launched on schedule. We'll fix any problems in post-production. The important thing is the stock price." The recording went viral instantly. It corroborated everything Marcus had said, proved that safety concerns had been systematically ignored, and showed that the failure went beyond just Victoria, it was institutional. Derek was fired within hours. 3 other engineers resigned. The NHTSA expanded their investigation, and Victoria Sterling's new company suddenly found its funding drying up as investors fled from the scandal. Marcus watched it all unfold from his small office at Apex, Emma's titanium wrench on his desk. He took no joy in the destruction. These were careers-ending lives, changing families affected. But he also thought about all the drivers who would have been in danger if the Zenith had launched without fixes, all the workers whose safety concerns were dismissed, all the people told they didn't matter because they didn't have the right credentials. Sometimes tearing down was necessary before building up could begin. His phone rang. Jennifer Park. "Victoria's lawyers want to settle. Drop the lawsuit, sign an NDA, everyone walks away." "No NDA. She drops the lawsuit and leaves me and my daughter alone. That's it." "Marcus, she's offering money too. Significant money." "I don't want her money. I want her gone from our lives." 2 days later, the lawsuit was dropped. Victoria Sterling disappeared from public view entirely. Some said she'd left the country. Others claimed she was living under an assumed name in Los Angeles. Marcus didn't care as long as she stayed away from Emma. The autumn rain hammered against the windows of Apex Automotive like accusations, each drop a reminder that the storm was far from over. Marcus stood in his office watching the parking lot below where employees rushed through the downpour and thought about how much had changed in 6 months. The Zenith had been fixed, redesigned, and successfully launched. Sales were strong. The company had recovered from the scandal. Marcus's safety protocols had prevented 3 potentially catastrophic failures in other models. By every metric, he was succeeding. So why did he feel like something was coming? Emma had noticed it too. That morning over breakfast, she'd asked, "Are you worried about something, Daddy?" "No, sweetheart. Just thinking about work." But she'd given him that look, the one that said she knew he was holding something back. Emma had developed a radar for trouble, probably from living through too much of it. The feeling crystallized when Jennifer Park called. "Marcus, we have a problem. Victoria Sterling is back." The words hit like ice water. "What do you mean back?" "She's been hired as a technical consultant for Meridian Automotive. They're Apex's biggest competitor. And Marcus, she's leading their new hypercar project, the one designed to compete directly with the Zenith." Marcus sat down slowly. Meridian Automotive had deep pockets and a reputation for playing dirty. If Victoria was there, she wasn't just back, she was armed. "There's more," Jennifer continued. "She's been recruiting. 3 of Apex's engineers have already jumped ship. She's offering double salaries and promising them recognition for their work, the exact opposite of how she treated people before. She's learned. That's what worries me. A humiliated Victoria Sterling was dangerous. A Victoria Sterling who's learned from her mistakes, that's terrifying." That afternoon, Richard Blackstone called an emergency board meeting. The conference room was tense, filled with executives who'd thought the Victoria problem was behind them. "She's not just working for Meridian," Blackstone announced. "Our intelligence suggests she's been given complete autonomy over their hypercar division, unlimited budget, and she's filing patents at an alarming rate." "Patents for what?" someone asked. "Technologies that sound suspiciously similar to what we're developing. Either she's parallel developing, which is unlikely, or we have a mole," Marcus finished. The room went silent. Corporate espionage was serious. It meant lawyers' investigations and paranoia that could tear a company apart from the inside. "I want a full security review," Blackstone ordered. "Check everyone with access to sensitive information. Meanwhile, we accelerate our own development. We can't let Meridian beat us to market." After the meeting, Marcus returned to his office to find someone waiting for him. Derek Morrison, the former lead engineer who'd been fired after the recording surfaced. He looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing a wrinkled suit that had seen better days. "We need to talk," Derek said. "Security is one button away, Derek." "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to warn you. Victoria approached me last month, offered me a job at Meridian." Marcus studied him carefully. "And I turned her down, but she said something you need to know. She said the Zenith failure wasn't the end of her plan, it was the beginning. That getting fired was actually better than staying CEO because now she could do what she really wanted without board oversight." "What does she really want?" Derek laughed bitterly. "To destroy you, obviously, but more than that, to prove that she was right all along, that credentials and connections matter more than practical knowledge. She's building something at Meridian, Marcus. Something designed specifically to humiliate Apex and you personally. Why are you telling me this? Because I might have been an arrogant ass, but I'm not a traitor, and because—" Derek paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Because you were right. About the safety issues, about the importance of practical experience. I spent so many years believing my degree made me superior that I forgot what actual engineering meant." Marcus considered this. Derek could be lying, could be a plant from Victoria, but something in his defeated posture suggested genuine regret. "What do you know about her project?" "Not much, but I know she's been reaching out to everyone who was hurt by the Zenith scandal, offering them redemption, a chance to prove themselves. She's building an army of people with grudges against Apex." That night, Marcus went home to find Emma working on a new science project, a model of an engine made entirely from recycled materials. "It's about showing that you don't need expensive stuff to understand how things work," she explained, hot gluing a plastic bottle to a cardboard base. Marcus helped her, trying to focus on the simple pleasure of building something with his daughter, but his mind kept returning to Victoria's plan. She was out there plotting, building, preparing something. The first sign of her strategy became clear a week later. A YouTube channel called Real Engineering Truth posted a video titled The Mechanic Myth: How Marcus Chen Nearly Destroyed American Innovation. It was professionally produced with slick graphics and compelling narration. The video painted Marcus as a saboteur who'd held back progress, who'd used his position to undermine brilliant engineers out of jealousy. The channel had no clear owner, but the production value screamed money. Within days, the video had millions of views and thousands of comments debating whether Marcus was really a hero or a villain. More videos followed. The danger of anti-intellectualism in tech. Why experience without education is killing innovation. Each one subtly undermining Marcus's reputation, reframing the narrative. It's character assassination, Jennifer Park said during an emergency meeting. But it's legal. They're not making specific false claims, just presenting opinion as fact. Can we trace who's behind it? Shell companies and foreign servers. Whoever's doing this knows how to hide. But Marcus knew. This had Victoria's fingerprints all over it, smart, subtle, designed to erode rather than explode. The campaign was working. Engineers at Apex started treating Marcus differently, questioning his decisions, asking if his practical experience was really superior to their education. The unity that had formed after the Zenith incident began to fracture. Then came the announcement that changed everything. Meridian Automotive held a press conference on a Tuesday morning streamed live to the world. The CEO, Harrison Cross, stood beside a covered vehicle, but it was the person next to him that made Marcus's blood run cold. Victoria Sterling looked transformed. Gone was both the corporate power dresser and the victim she'd played in interviews. This was Victoria 3.0 professional, but approachable, confident, but not arrogant. She'd learned to modulate herself to present the image needed for the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Cross announced, Meridian Automotive is proud to introduce the future of sustainable hypercars. The phoenix rising from the ashes of failed innovation to show the world what's possible when genius is properly supported. The cover dropped, and Marcus had to admit the car was stunning. Sleeker than the Zenith, with design elements that seemed to address every criticism of Apex's vehicle. It was painted in a gradient that shifted from black to gold, literally embodying the rise from ashes theme. But a car is only as good as its engineering, Cross continued, which is why I'm proud to announce that Victoria Sterling, one of the brightest minds in automotive technology, is leading this project. Victoria stepped forward, and her smile was perfect, humble enough to seem reformed, confident enough to command respect. Thank you, Harrison. 6 months ago, I learned valuable lessons about hubris and the importance of every voice in innovation. The Phoenix represents not just technological advancement, but a philosophy of inclusive engineering. We've built this car with input from everyone from PhDs to mechanics, from designers to assembly line workers. Marcus watched, feeling sick. She was co-opting his message, taking the very principles he'd fought for and claiming them as her own. To prove the Phoenix's superiority, Victoria continued, we're issuing a challenge. In 30 days at the Laguna Seca Raceway, the Phoenix will race any competitor's vehicle, not just for speed, but for endurance, efficiency, and reliability. A true test of engineering excellence. The camera zoomed in on her face, and for just a moment her eyes seemed to look directly through the screen at Marcus. We especially invite Apex Automotive and their Zenith to compete. After all, Mr. Chen's modifications made it functional. Let's see if functional can beat exceptional. It was a trap and everyone knew it, but it was a trap Apex couldn't avoid. Refusing would look like cowardice. Accepting meant playing Victoria's game. Richard Blackstone called within minutes of the conference ending. We have to race, he said simply. Stock price is already dropping on speculation that we're afraid to compete. She's had months to prepare. She knows our vehicle inside and out. Then we'll have to be better. Marcus, I'm putting you in charge of race preparation. Whatever you need, whoever you need, you have it. Marcus hung up and looked at Emma's titanium wrench on his desk. David versus Goliath again. Except this time Goliath had learned from the last fight. He assembled a team that afternoon, not just engineers but mechanics, test drivers, even assembly line workers who knew the Zenith's every bolt and wire. If Victoria wanted to play inclusive engineering, he'd show her what that really meant. She's expecting us to just upgrade the existing Zenith, Marcus told the team. But that's not what we're going to do. We're going to rebuild it from the ground up, keeping what works, fixing what doesn't, and adding innovations she won't see coming. An eager young engineer named Sarah Kim raised her hand. What kind of innovations? The kind that come from actually listening to drivers, not just computers. Sarah, I want you to spend 3 days with our test drivers. Don't read reports, ride with them. Feel what they feel. Understand what the data doesn't show. He turned to Tony Martinez, a mechanic with 30 years' experience. Tony, you've been complaining about the brake cooling system since day one. Show us what you do differently. You serious? Tony asked, surprised. You want my input on $1 million car? I want your input because you fix more brake failures than anyone in this room has simulated. Real experience matters. The team worked 18-hour days. Marcus barely saw Emma coming home after she was asleep, leaving before she woke. The guilt ate at him, but he told himself it was temporary just until the race. Emma understood in her way. She left him notes on his pillow. You've got this, Daddy. Show them what fixing really means. Mom would be proud. 2 weeks into preparation, they had their first breakthrough. Sarah Kim, after riding with test drivers, identified a steering response lag that was imperceptible in data but frustrating in practice. The fix was simple, a software adjustment that cost nothing but improved handling dramatically. Tony's brake cooling redesign added 20% more efficiency with parts that actually cost less than the original design. Simple is better, he said with a shrug. Always has been. But for every breakthrough there were setbacks. Parts that should have been delivered on time were mysteriously delayed. Test data was leaked online before they could implement changes. It was clear they had a spy, but finding them would take time they didn't have. Marcus decided on a different approach. During a team meeting, he announced false plans loudly enough to be overheard, then implemented the real improvements in secret working with a small, trusted circle after hours. It was exhausting paranoid work, but necessary. A week before the race disaster struck, the Zenith's new engine management system, the heart of their improvements, crashed during a test run. The car died at 180 miles per hour on the test track. The driver walked away, but the car was damaged, and worse, they couldn't figure out what had caused the failure. It's like the code just corrupted itself, Sarah Kim reported, exhausted after 12 hours of debugging. This doesn't make sense. It was perfect yesterday. Marcus studied the code, though programming wasn't his expertise. Something about the failure pattern seemed familiar, intentional even. Then he saw at a tiny subroutine buried deep in the code, something that would only activate under specific race conditions. It's sabotage, he said quietly. Someone inserted a kill switch. The room erupted in angry voices, accusations, paranoia. Trust completely shattered. Everyone looked at everyone else with suspicion. Stop, Marcus commanded. This is what she wants. Us turning on each other, falling apart. We don't have time for a witch hunt. Sarah, can you remove the malicious code? Yes, but if there's one, there might be others. Then we go analog. Marcus made a decision that would have horrified most modern engineers. Strip out every non-essential electronic system. Replace computer controls with mechanical ones where possible. Make this car unhackable. That's insane, someone protested. We'll lose efficiency, telemetry, half our advantages. We'll lose the race if the car dies on the track. I'd rather finish driving a go-kart than not finish in a spaceship. They worked around the clock for 3 days, essentially rebuilding half the car. Marcus's hands were cut and bleeding from the work, his back screaming from hours bent over the engine. But piece by piece, they created something unique, a hypercar that combined cutting-edge technology with old-school reliability. The night before they had to leave for Laguna Seca, Marcus finally made it home before Emma's bedtime. She was waiting for him, her science project complete. I won first place, she said quietly. The judges said it showed true innovation, making something amazing from simple parts. Marcus hugged her, tears threatening. He'd missed her presentation, missed her victory, missed another moment he couldn't get back. I'm sorry I wasn't there. It's okay, Daddy. You were building something amazing from simple parts, too. They sat together on the couch, Emma curled against his side, and Marcus told her about the race, about Victoria's challenge, about what it meant. Are you going to win? She asked. I don't know. She's smart, she's prepared, and she wants to win more than anything. But you have something she doesn't. What's that? Emma pulled out the titanium wrench, the one she'd given him that had become famous. You fix things because it's right, not because you want to beat someone. That's your real superpower. The next morning, the Apex team loaded up for Laguna Seca. The track with its famous corkscrew turn was considered one of the most challenging in America. It would test every aspect of both cars, speed handling endurance, and driver skill. Marcus was running final checks when Richard Blackstone appeared. "There's something you should know," Blackstone said quietly. "Our investigators found the mole. It was James Morrison Derrick's brother, the one whose recording helped vindicate you." Marcus felt like he'd been punched. What? Victoria got to him months ago, promised to restore his brother's reputation if he helped her. He's been feeding her information from the beginning. The betrayal stung more than Marcus expected. James had seemed like an ally, someone else from the working class standing up to corporate arrogance. But everyone had a price, apparently. "Have him arrested." "No, let him go. We've already won by discovering him. Besides," Marcus looked at their rebuilt Zenith. "She's been preparing for the wrong car. Let her be surprised." The Laguna Seca paddock was a circus. Media from around the world, influencers live streaming tech billionaires placing informal bets. The narrative was irresistible. The rematch between Marcus Chen and Victoria Sterling played out through million-dollar machines. Victoria arrived like a queen returning from exile. Her team wore matching black and gold uniforms, moving with military precision. The Phoenix was even more impressive in person, seeming to absorb light and reflect it back as heat. She found Marcus during the driver's meeting, approaching with that new measured confidence. "Marcus, good to see you again." "Victoria, I want you to know," she said loud enough for nearby reporters to hear, "that whatever happened before this is just about proving which team built the better car. No hard feelings." It was a performance, and they both knew it. But Marcus played along, shaking her offered hand while cameras clicked around them. "May the best car win," he said. Victoria's smile was sharp. "Oh, it will." The race format was complex, not just a simple speed contest, but a series of challenges. Speed laps, of course, but also endurance runs, efficiency tests, obstacle avoidance, and even a maintenance challenge where teams had to perform repairs and modifications under time pressure. "It's designed to find the complete car," the race director explained. "Speed means nothing if you can't last. Efficiency means nothing if you can't perform." Marcus noticed Victoria's slight smile at the maintenance challenge. She'd added that specifically for him, thinking it would be their advantage. She didn't know about Tony and the team of mechanics he'd assembled, people who could strip and rebuild an engine blindfolded. The first event was pure speed, 5 flying laps, fastest average time wins. The Phoenix went first, and it was spectacular. Victoria's driver, a former F1 racer named Alessandro Voss, pushed the car to its limits. The sound it made was unlike anything, not the roar of combustion or the whine of standard electric, but something altogether new, a harmony of power that seemed almost organic. Lap times appeared on the board: 1:23.7, 1:23.5, 1:23.6, 1:23.4, 1:23.5. Average 1:23.54. The crowd erupted. Those were professional race car times from a street-legal hypercar. Marcus turned to their driver, Amy Nakamura, a relatively unknown racer who'd been chosen not for her fame, but for her ability to feel a car's limits without computer assistance. "Their car is faster," Amy said simply, "but it's nervous. Did you see the corrections Voss was making in turn 6? The car wants to go faster than it can handle." "Can we beat their time?" "Not in pure speed, but I don't think pure speed is what wins this race." Amy was right. The Zenith's times were good, but not quite as good. 1:24.2 average. They lost the first event, and Victoria's smile was visible from across the paddock. The second event was endurance, 50 laps at racing pace points deducted for every pit stop needed. This was where the Phoenix's advanced technology should dominate. For the first 20 laps, it did. The Phoenix maintained incredible pace while the Zenith seemed to labor. But then Marcus noticed something: the Phoenix's lap times were gradually increasing. Not much, maybe a tenth of a second per lap, but consistently. "Thermal management," Tony observed, watching the telemetry. "All that advanced tech generates heat. They're having to dial back to prevent overheating." Meanwhile, the Zenith's simplified systems ran cool and consistent. Amy maintained the same pace lap after lap, the mechanical reliability Marcus had insisted on paying dividends. By lap 35, the Phoenix needed a pit stop, not for failure, but for cooling system adjustment. It only took 2 minutes, but in racing, 2 minutes was an eternity. The Zenith completed all 50 laps without stopping. Event 2 went to apex. The competition continued through the day. Efficiency testing showed the Phoenix's superiority in energy management. Victoria's team had developed a revolutionary regeneration system that captured energy from sources no one had thought to tap. But the obstacle avoidance course revealed the Phoenix's weakness. All that technology made it dependent on sensors that could be confused by unexpected variables. The Zenith, with Amy's human instincts, augmented by simple, robust systems, navigated flawlessly. By the time they reached the maintenance challenge, the teams were tied. This final event would determine the winner. The challenge was diabolical. Each team had to replace a major component, a drive unit, in under 30 minutes while the car was running. It tested not just speed, but the ability to work under pressure with active systems. Victoria's team was polished professional, moving with the precision of a Formula One pit crew. But Marcus noticed they were following a strict procedure, checking tablets for each step, confirming with computers before proceeding. "Old school," Marcus told his team. "Trust your hands, not the screens." Tony led the charge with Marcus and 3 other mechanics working in perfect synchronization. No tablets, no confirmations, just decades of combined experience moving in harmony. They could feel when bolts were properly torqued, hear when connections were secure, know from touch when everything was right. 23 minutes for Apex, 27 for Meridian. The crowd was stunned. The mechanics, the low-tech team, had beaten the engineers at their own game. The victory at Laguna Seca should have been the end of it. Marcus's team had won 3 events to 2, proving that practical experience combined with smart engineering could beat pure technological superiority. The automotive press called it David's revenge, and Apex's stock price soared while Meridian stumbled. But Victoria Sterling didn't accept defeat. She never had. The call came at 2 a.m. 3 days after the race. Marcus was finally sleeping well for the first time in months when his phone rang. The number was blocked, but somehow he knew who it would be. "Congratulations." Victoria's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "You won fair and square." Marcus sat up, instantly alert. "What do you want, Victoria?" "To offer you a job, actually. Meridian needs someone with your skills. $5 million a year, full autonomy, and you can bring your whole team. Even your daughter would be set for life." "Not interested." "You haven't heard the alternative." The pleasant tone vanished, replaced by something cold and sharp. "I've been doing research, Marcus. Deep research. About your wife's death. About the hospital that treated her. About the experimental treatment that was available but wasn't offered to someone of your economic status." Marcus's blood turned to ice. "What are you talking about?" Stanford Medical had a trial program for her specific condition, 90% success rate. But it was expensive experimental, not covered by insurance. They never even told you it existed, did they? The phone trembled in Marcus's hand. He'd always wondered if there had been something more, some treatment they'd missed. But he'd trusted the doctors believed them when they said they'd done everything possible. "You're lying. Check your email." Against his better judgment, Marcus opened his email. There it was, documents from Stanford Medical's trial program dated 3 months before Linda's death. Eligibility criteria that Linda met perfectly. Success stories from patients with her exact condition. "They chose not to tell you because they knew you couldn't afford it," Victoria continued. $200,000 would have saved her life. But you were just a mechanic with a small shop, not worth the effort. Marcus couldn't breathe. The room spun around him. $200,000. He could have borrowed it, sold everything, found a way. If only he'd known. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand something. The system that let your wife die. That's the same system you're protecting by staying at Apex. The hierarchy that values money over merit, connections over compassion. You think you're fighting it, but you're just another cog in the machine. You're part of that system too." "I was. But I've learned something. The system can't be reformed from within. It has to be destroyed and rebuilt. That's what I'm really doing at Meridian. Not just building cars, but creating a new model. One where talent is recognized regardless of background. Marcus wanted to hang up, but the documents on his screen held him paralyzed. Page after page of evidence that Linda could have been saved. "Join me," Victoria said. "Together we can tear down the old guard and build something better. Or stay at Apex knowing that you're working for the same kind of people who let your wife die. You humiliated me, tried to destroy me. And I apologize for that. I was wrong. I was everything I claimed to hate, arrogant, dismissive, cruel. But failure taught me what success never could. I've changed Marcus. Let me prove it." The line went dead. Marcus didn't sleep the rest of the night. He read every document, researched every claim. It was all true. Stanford Medical had run the program. Linda had qualified. The only barrier had been money and the hospital's decision not to inform them of the option. When Emma woke up for school, she found him still at his laptop. Eyes red, hands shaking. "Daddy, what's wrong?" How could he tell her? How could he explain that her mother might have lived if they'd had money, if the system had been fair, if someone had just told them the truth? "Just work stuff, sweetheart. Get ready for school." But Emma knew him too well. She wrapped her arms around him from behind her chin on his shoulder. "Whatever it is, we'll fix it together. That's what Mom would say." After Emma left for school, Marcus called in sick to work the first time since starting at Apex. He drove to the cemetery where Linda was buried, needing to be near her, needing to somehow apologize for not knowing, not fighting harder, not being enough. He sat by her headstone for hours, talking to her the way he had in the early days after her death. "I could have saved you," he whispered. "If I'd just known, if I'd just pushed harder, asked more questions, you'd still be here. Emma would have her mother." The guilt was crushing absolute. Every success he'd had since her death felt hollow. He'd fixed a car, exposed some corporate corruption, won a race. But he'd failed at the only thing that really mattered, protecting his family. His phone buzzed. Jennifer Park. "Marcus, where are you?" "Richard Blackstone is looking for you. There's an emergency board meeting." "I'm not coming in today." "Marcus, this is serious. Someone leaked proprietary information to Meridian. They're accusing you." The accusation cut through his grief, replacing it with anger. "What?" "Security footage shows you accessing files you shouldn't have been looking at 2 nights ago. Files that ended up in Meridian's patent applications this morning." Marcus remembered he'd been researching the Phoenix's technology, trying to understand their innovations. But he'd used his own access codes, followed all protocols. "I didn't leak anything." "I believe you, but the board needs answers. If you don't show up, it looks like guilt." Marcus looked at Linda's headstone one more time. "I'll be there in an hour." The boardroom at Apex felt like a tribunal. 12 board members sat in judgment, with Richard Blackstone at the head, looking disappointed rather than angry, which was somehow worse. "Marcus," Blackstone began, "we have evidence that files you accessed were transmitted to Meridian servers within hours. Your access codes, your computer, your digital fingerprint." "Someone cloned my access," Marcus said, "or hacked my computer. This is Victoria's doing." "Victoria Sterling." Board member Harrison Webb laughed. "You're obsessed with that woman. First you humiliate her, now you blame her for everything. Maybe she was right about you. Maybe you did sabotage the Zenith originally." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Webb continued. "You had means, motive, and opportunity. You knew the car would fail because you made it fail. Then you played hero to advance your career." Other board members were nodding, doubt creeping across their faces. The narrative was shifting, history being rewritten in real time. "I've given everything to this company," Marcus said quietly. "I've worked 18-hour days, missed time with my daughter bled for Apex's success." "No one's questioning your dedication," Blackstone said carefully, "but we need to investigate. Until we can clear this up, you're suspended. With pay," he added, as if that made it better. Marcus stood slowly, feeling the weight of every gaze in the room. These people who'd praised him, who'd called him a hero, were now looking at him like a criminal. "You want to know what Victoria told me last night?" Marcus asked. "She offered me $5 million to join Meridian. I turned her down. Does that sound like someone who's secretly working for her?" "She called you?" Blackstone's eyes sharpened. "You've been in contact with her." Marcus realized his mistake immediately. Now it looked like he'd been negotiating with the enemy. "She called me. I didn't. I think you should go, Blackstone said. We'll contact you when the investigation is complete. Marcus left the building in a daze. In the parking lot, reporters were already gathering. Someone had leaked the suspension, probably to damage Apex's stock price. Mr. Chen, is it true you've been accused of corporate espionage? Did you sabotage the original Zenith launch? Are you secretly working for Victoria Sterling? He pushed through them to his car, their questions following him like accusations. By the time he got home, the story was already online. Fall of a hero Marcus Chen, suspended for suspected corporate espionage. Emma was home from school early release day he'd forgotten. She was watching the news on her tablet, tears streaming down her face. They're saying you're a bad person, she said, that you lied about everything. Marcus held his daughter as she cried, feeling his own world crumbling. Everything he'd built, everything he'd achieved was being destroyed. And the worst part was the doubt creeping into his own mind. Had he accessed those files? Had his computer been compromised, or was he losing his grip on reality? The stress finally breaking him. That night, unable to sleep again, Marcus went through everything methodically. The accessed files, the timeline, the technical details. And then he saw a small anomaly in the access logs. The files had been accessed using his codes, but from 2 locations simultaneously. His office computer and another terminal in the building. Someone had cloned his access in real time, using it while he was using it to hide their tracks. He called Jennifer Park immediately. I found something. Someone was accessing files at the same time as me using my credentials. It's technically sophisticated, but it's proof I'm being framed. Send me everything. We'll get forensic analysts on it immediately. But by morning, it was too late. Meridian announced their new car, the Phoenix 2, incorporating technology that was eerily similar to Apex's developments. Close enough to damage Apex's competitive advantage, different enough to avoid patent infringement. And worse, James Morrison went public with a confession. I was Marcus Chen's inside source, he told a packed press conference, Victoria Sterling standing beside him with a concerned expression. He approached me months ago, offered to help restore my brother's reputation if I fed him information. I thought I was helping expose corporate corruption. I didn't realize he was playing both sides. It was all lies, but it was believable lies. The media ran with it, the narrative too juicy to fact-check. The mechanic hero was actually a corporate spy playing a long game no one had seen coming. Marcus's phone rang constantly. Reporters, former colleagues, even people he'd thought were friends, all wanting to know if it was true. He stopped answering. What was the point? Emma stayed home from school after kids started bullying her, calling her father a traitor and a liar. Marcus watched his daughter retreat into herself, the bright, confident girl diminishing with each passing hour. On the 3rd day of his suspension, Derek Morrison appeared at his door. We need to talk, Derek said. Away from any electronics. This goes deeper than you know. They walked to a nearby park, Derek constantly checking over his shoulder. Victoria didn't just plan this, Derek said. She's been planning it for over a year, before the Zenith launch, before you exposed her. She knew the car would fail because she designed it to fail. Marcus stopped walking. What? She wanted to get fired. Being CEO limited her board oversight, public scrutiny, legal obligations. But as a private actor backed by Meridian's resources, she could do anything. The humiliation was staged, Marcus. You didn't expose her, you played into her hands. That's insane. She couldn't have predicted couldn't she? She studied you for months, knew your history, your psychology, your triggers. She knew exactly how you'd react to the safety issue, to her mockery, to everything. You're not her enemy, Marcus, you're her tool. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Everything, the viral video, the lawsuit, the race, all of it, had been orchestrated. Why are you telling me this? Because she's not done. The Phoenix 2 launches next week. She's going to do something at that launch. Something that destroys Apex permanently and elevates her to legendary status. I don't know what, but I know it involves you. I'm suspended. I can't even get into the building. That's what she's counting on. You being helpless, watching from the sidelines as she wins. Derek handed him a flash drive. Everything I could gather about her real plan. Be careful, she has people everywhere. Trust no one at Apex. After Derek left, Marcus sat in the park watching normal people live normal lives. Joggers passing by parents, pushing strollers, dogs chasing balls. A world that made sense where people weren't playing four-dimensional chess with each other's lives. His phone rang. Richard Blackstone. Marcus, I need you to come in. Not to Apex, to my home. Tonight. Tell no one. Blackstone's house was a monument to success, 15,000 square feet of glass and stone overlooking the bay. But the man who met Marcus at the door looked haggard, aged 10 years and 3 days. I've been investigating, Blackstone said, leading Marcus to a secure room with no windows, no electronics. Not the leak that's a distraction. I've been investigating Victoria Sterling's entire history. What I found, Marcus, we're in trouble. He spread documents across a table, financial records, patent filings, corporate structures. Victoria Sterling doesn't exist, Blackstone said. Oh, the person is real, but the identity is constructed. Her credentials, her background, even her education, all of it is fabricated or bought. That's impossible. Stanford, Harvard. She attended, but under different names. She's been building this identity for a decade, specifically to infiltrate the automotive industry. She's backed by foreign interests who want to destroy American automotive innovation from within. Marcus studied the documents, his mind reeling. Why would she expose herself with the zenith failure, then? Because that was just phase 1. Establish herself as a victim, gain sympathy, rebuild with unlimited resources. Phase 2 is destroying Apex and acquiring our technology for her backers. Phase 3. Blackstone paused. Phase 3 is monopolizing the entire electric vehicle market through patent manipulation and corporate warfare. We have to expose this. With what proof? Everything I have is circumstantial, gathered through methods that weren't exactly legal. If we go public now, we look desperate, making wild accusations to distract from your espionage scandal. So what do we do? Blackstone looked older than his 60 years, the weight of failure pressing down on him. I don't know. She's outplayed us at every turn. Maybe it's time to admit defeat. No, Marcus said, thinking of Emma, of Linda, of every worker who'd been dismissed and ignored. She's smart, but she's not perfect. She's arrogant, that's her weakness. She needs to win completely, publicly, dramatically. That's what we use against her. How? Marcus pulled out Derek's flash drive. We give her exactly what she wants, a complete public victory, and then we show the world what's behind it. They spent the next 3 hours going through Derek's information, piecing together Victoria's plan. It was audacious, brilliant, and completely insane. She intended to challenge Apex to another race at the Phoenix 2 launch, but this time with a twist, the cars would be fully autonomous, no drivers, just algorithms. She knows our self-driving system isn't ready, Blackstone said. We'd have to decline looking weak or accept and fail spectacularly. Unless we don't use our system, Marcus said slowly, an idea forming. Unless we use something else entirely. What else? We don't have time to develop. We don't develop. We simplify. Strip the Zenith down to basics, install the minimum autonomous system, just enough to technically qualify. It'll lose, but that's not the point. Then what is the point? Marcus smiled for the first time in days. The point is to be on that track when she reveals whatever her real plan is. To be close enough to expose it. Blackstone was quiet for a moment. You're suspended. You can't officially work on this. Then I'll work on it unofficially. Get me Tony Martinez and Sarah Kim. Tell them nothing except that we need to prepare a car. Keep it completely off the books. This is insane. This is exactly the kind of insane she won't expect from us. As Marcus left Blackstone's house, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop fighting, Marcus. You've already lost. Take the Meridian offer. Think of Emma, V. He deleted the message and called Tony Martinez. Tony, how do you feel about doing something incredibly stupid that might just be brilliant? Is it legal? Mostly. Is it dangerous? So, probably. Tony laughed. I'm in. When do we start? Tonight. And Tony, bring hand tools. We're going analog. The warehouse Tony Martinez secured was perfect, abandoned, off the grid, and large enough to hide a hypercar. Located in Oakland's industrial district, it had once built engines for cargo ships. Now it would rebuild something that might save Apex Automotive or destroy what was left of Marcus's reputation. Sarah Kim arrived at midnight looking nervous but determined. Tony had brought 3 other mechanics he trusted, absolutely men and women who'd been building and fixing cars since before computers ran everything. Before we start, Marcus said, You need to know this is completely unofficial. If we're caught, Apex will deny any knowledge. You'll probably lose your jobs. I'm suspended, so I'm already risking everything. Anyone who wants to leave—" "Cut the speech," Tony interrupted. "We're here. What's the plan?" Marcus pulled a tarp off the car Blackstone had secretly delivered. Not the race-winning Zenith, but its prototype, the one they'd used for testing before the computers and sensors were installed. It was raw, basic, powerful, and completely mechanical. "We're going to make this car do something impossible," Marcus said. "We're going to make it drive itself without any modern autonomous systems." Sarah laughed. "That's not impossible. That's insane. You need LiDAR cameras, machine learning algorithms." Or, Marcus interrupted, "we need to think differently. What if the car doesn't need to be smart? What if it just needs to follow a predetermined path perfectly?" He pulled out blueprints he'd drawn by hand, no digital copies that could be hacked or traced. The Phoenix 2 launch is at Meridian's test track. It's a closed course, known variables. We don't need the car to think we need it to execute a perfect routine, like a player piano performing a song. Tony studied the blueprints, his expression shifting from skepticism to interest. Mechanical programming, like the old automatons. Every turn, every acceleration physically programmed into the system. Exactly. We mapped the course program, the exact movements needed, and let physics do the rest. No computers to hack, no algorithms, to fail, just pure mechanical precision. "It'll never beat Victoria's car, Shum," Sarah pointed out. "It doesn't need to beat it. It just needs to be on the track when she executes whatever her real plan is." They worked through the night, then the next, then the next. Marcus barely saw Emma leaving her with Mrs. Rodriguez and hating himself for it. But something drove him forward, not revenge, not pride, but a growing certainty that Victoria's plan was bigger and more dangerous than anyone realized. The mechanical programming system they developed was brilliantly simple. Every action the car needed to take was encoded onto a series of custom cams and gears, like a massive music box. Turn the key, and the car would execute its routine perfectly, every time, as long as nothing unexpected happened. "One piece of debris on the track, and this whole thing fails," Sarah warned during a test run. "Then we better hope for a clean track." On the fourth night, while Marcus was adjusting the steering mechanism, Derek Morrison arrived. He looked terrified. "She knows," he said without preamble. "Victoria knows what you're doing." Marcus's blood went cold. "How?" "She's had your daughter's school under surveillance. Noticed you weren't picking her up, traced your movements. She knows about this warehouse." Marcus grabbed Derek's shirt. "If anything happens to Emma, she won't hurt her. That's not her style. But Marcus, you need to know what she's really planning at the launch." Derek pulled out a tablet showing technical specifications that made Marcus's stomach drop. The Phoenix 2 isn't just autonomous. It's equipped with a new kind of System 1 that can hijack other vehicles' computers. During the race, she's going to take control of your car and crash it. Make it look like Apex's technology is fatally flawed. The footage will destroy the company overnight. "But we're not using computers." Marcus stopped realizing. "She doesn't know that. Even if your mechanical system works, she has a backup plan. The Phoenix 2 is designed to fail catastrophically at a specific point, making it look like both companies produce dangerous vehicles. She'll emerge as the whistleblower who exposed the danger, the hero who sacrificed her own car to reveal the truth. While her backers buy both companies for pennies when the stock crashes," Marcus finished, "then rebuild with her in charge of everything. You have to stop this launch." "No," Marcus said, thinking fast. "We have to let it happen. But we need to control how it happens." He turned to his team. "Change of plans. We're not just programming our car to race. We're programming it to do something else at exactly the right moment." "What?" Tony asked. "We're going to save her life." The Phoenix 2 launch event was everything Victoria Sterling did: excessive, dramatic, and perfectly orchestrated. The Meridian test track had been transformed into a technological wonderland with holographic displays, live orchestral music, and enough LED screens to light up Oakland. Marcus watched from the parking lot, officially banned from the event, but close enough to see everything. Emma was with him. He couldn't leave her alone, not now. "Are you going to stop the bad lady?" Emma asked, holding his hand tight. "I'm going to try, sweetheart." Inside the event, Richard Blackstone was playing his part. having publicly accepted Victoria's challenge despite Marcus's suspension. The narrative was perfect, the disgraced company trying to redeem itself against the rising star who'd been wronged. Victoria took the stage in a white suit that made her look like the future personified. Behind her, the Phoenix 2 gleamed under spotlights, aggressive, beautiful, predatory. "Today we make history," she announced. "Two cars, no drivers, pure artificial intelligence determining the winner. This isn't just a race, it's humanity handing over control to the machines we've created." The crowd ate it up. Tech journalists typed frantically live streams, accumulated millions of viewers. And somewhere in foreign capitals, Victoria's backers watched their plan unfold. "Apex Automotive has accepted our challenge." Victoria continued, her smile sharp. "Their Zenith will compete against the Phoenix 2 in a 20-lap race. May the best algorithm win." Backstage, Tony and Sarah wheeled in the modified Zenith. To anyone watching, it looked identical to the race-winning car. The mechanical programming system was completely hidden, the cams and gears invisible beneath standard bodywork. "Chen suspended," Victoria said to Blackstone, loud enough for microphones to catch. "I hope you have someone competent managing your car." "We have a team," Blackstone replied calmly. "That's all we need." The cars were positioned at the starting line. Victoria made a show of activating the Phoenix 2's autonomous system, the car's lights pulsing in response. Tony simply turned a hidden key in the Zenith, engaging the mechanical program. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria announced, "witness the future." The flag dropped. Both cars launched forward, the Phoenix 2 with smooth electronic precision, the Zenith with mechanical determination. For 3 laps, they stayed close, the Phoenix gradually pulling ahead as expected. Marcus watched from his position, Emma beside him, counting down in his head. The mechanical program would execute its special maneuver at exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds, the precise moment Derek's intelligence suggested Victoria's crash protocol would activate. "Daddy, look!" Emma pointed at the Phoenix 2. "Something's wrong with the black car." She was right. The Phoenix was starting to weave slightly, its movements becoming erratic. Victoria's remote hijacking system was trying to take control of the Zenith, but finding no computer to interface with the signals, were bouncing back, interfering with the Phoenix's own systems. Victoria, watching from the control booth, frantically typed commands. This wasn't the plan. The Zenith should be careening off track by now, its crash captured in perfect HD for the world to see. At 4 minutes and 35 seconds, the Phoenix 2's systems went haywire. The feedback loop from the failed hijacking attempt caused cascading failures. The car accelerated wildly, heading straight for the wall at 180 miles per hour. At 4 minutes and 37 seconds, the Zenith executed its program maneuver. The mechanical system Marcus had programmed performed a perfect pit maneuver, spinning the Phoenix away from the wall and into the infield where it could slow down safely. To everyone watching, it looked like Apex's car had somehow detected the danger and saved its competitor. The crowd gasped. The Phoenix 2 came to a stop in a cloud of tire smoke, damaged but intact. The Zenith, its program complete, simply stopped on the track. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Richard Blackstone walked onto the track, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you just witnessed was not a malfunction. Our investigation has revealed that the Phoenix 2 was equipped with illegal hijacking technology designed to take control of our vehicle. When it failed to find a computer to hack because our car was running on purely mechanical programming, the system turned on itself." He held up a tablet showing the evidence Derek had provided, now legally obtained through the failed hijacking attempt being recorded by track sensors. "Furthermore, we have evidence that this entire event was staged to destroy both companies' stock values, allowing foreign interests to acquire American automotive technology at bargain prices." Victoria stood frozen in the control booth, her perfect plan unraveling on live television. She tried to speak into her microphone, but it had been cut off. Federal agents entered the venue. Blackstone had alerted them the moment the hijacking attempt was detected. Securities fraud, corporate espionage, attempted destruction of property, conspiracy with foreign agents. The charges would be numerous and severe. But Victoria Sterling had one last card to play. As the agents approached, she pulled out her phone and activated something. Every screen in the venue suddenly displayed documents, medical records, financial statements, personal communications. Marcus's heart stopped. They were Linda's medical records, the Stanford trial information proof that the hospital had denied them life-saving treatment. But there was more documents suggesting Marcus had known about the treatment and chosen not to pursue it, that he'd let his wife die rather than go into debt. "If I'm going down," Victoria's voice echoed through the venue's speakers, "everyone should know the truth about Marcus Chen. He let his wife die. He chose money over her life. This is your hero." The crowd turned to look at Marcus, who had walked onto the track with Emma. The little girl was crying, confused by what she was hearing about her mother. Marcus picked up the microphone Blackstone had dropped. The entire world was watching. "You're right," he said quietly. "I didn't know about the treatment until you told me. The hospital didn't inform us because we were poor, because in their system, Linda's life was worth less than someone who could pay." He looked directly at Victoria, who was now in handcuffs but still smirking. "You thought this would break me, but all you've done is shown everyone what's really broken: a system that values money over lives, credentials over competence, connections over character. Linda died because of that system. But Emma lives, and she's going to grow up in a better world. One where people like you don't get to decide who matters." He turned to the cameras. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a mechanic who knew how to fix things. Sometimes that's all you need, someone willing to get their hands dirty and do the work." Emma ran to him, and he picked her up, holding her tight. "Your mom would be proud," he whispered to her. "We fixed something important today." Victoria was led away, her empire crumbling, her backers exposed, her future reduced to legal battles and prison time. But as she passed Marcus, she stopped. "You still don't get it," she said quietly. "I was never your enemy. I was showing you what the system really is. Now you're part of it. You've won, but you've become everything you fought against." Marcus looked at her, this brilliant, broken woman who'd orchestrated so much destruction in pursuit of a twisted vision. "No," he said. "I'm still just a mechanic. The difference is now people listen when I say something's broken." The aftermath was swift and comprehensive. Meridian's involvement with foreign agents triggered a federal investigation that reached into dozens of companies. The Phoenix 2 technology, despite its illegal applications, contained genuine innovations that, when properly regulated, could improve vehicle safety. Marcus was officially reinstated at Apex, his suspension lifted with full apologies. He was offered the CEO position again and again. He turned it down. Instead, he accepted a new role, Director of Practical Innovation, leading a team that bridged the gap between theoretical engineering and real-world application. The scholarship fund he'd requested was expanded into a full foundation, providing education and opportunities for working-class families. The first recipient was a young woman from Detroit who'd been fixing cars since she was 12 but couldn't afford engineering school. Emma returned to school with her head held high. The bullies who'd tormented her now wanted to be her friends, but she chose carefully, remembering who had stood by her when things were hard. One evening, 3 months after Victoria's arrest, Marcus and Emma visited Linda's grave. They brought flowers and the news that the medical system was under investigation, that reforms were being proposed to ensure treatment information was shared regardless of economic status. "We can't bring her back," Marcus told Emma, "but we can make sure other families don't go through what we did." Emma placed her hand on the headstone, then looked up at her father. "Mom would say you used your superpower right." "What superpower is that?" "Fixing things that matter." They stood there as the sun set, two people who'd lost so much but refused to be broken. In Marcus's pocket, the titanium wrench caught the dying light, a reminder that sometimes the smallest tools could move the biggest mountains. A year later, Marcus stood before Congress testifying about automotive safety and corporate responsibility. The room was full of suits and political power, but he wore his work clothes, a statement that expertise came in many forms. "Senators," he began, "I'm here to tell you that every voice matters in innovation. The person who designs the car and the person who fixes it both have crucial knowledge. When we ignore either, people die. When we listen to both, we build better." Behind him sat Emma, now 11, working on homework, but occasionally looking up to watch her father. She was designing her own engine modification, something that would improve fuel efficiency using principles she'd learned not from textbooks but from watching her father work. The senators asked complex questions about technology regulation and corporate structure. Marcus answered simply, directly, without jargon or pretense. When one senator, known for his dismissive attitude toward working-class testimony, tried to undermine Marcus's credibility, the mechanic simply pulled out the titanium wrench. "Senator, this tool has fixed more problems than any algorithm or MBA program. Not because it's special, but because the hand holding it knew what to do. That knowledge, practical, earned, proven, deserves the same respect as any degree." The room was quiet. Then from the gallery, someone started clapping. It spread through the room, not partisan applause, but recognition of truth simply stated. After the testimony, Marcus and Emma walked through Washington, D.C., tourists in a city of power. They stopped at the Lincoln Memorial, looking up at the statue of another man who'd risen from humble beginnings to change the world. "Think you'll ever be famous like him?" Emma asked. "I hope not," Marcus said. "Famous people can't fix things quietly. They have to make speeches and wear suits." Emma laughed. "You hate suits." "Almost as much as I hate speeches." They walked on hand in hand past monuments to great men and great deeds. But Marcus knew the real monuments were smaller, the cars that didn't crash because someone spoke up about safety, the families that weren't destroyed by corporate greed, the workers who were heard because someone made space for their voices. Victoria Sterling was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, her assets seized, her reputation destroyed. But in her final statement to the court, she said something that haunted Marcus. "I created Marcus Chen. Without me, he'd still be mopping floors. Every success he has, every life he saves exists because I pushed him to be more. I'm the villain in his story, but without villains, there are no heroes." Marcus thought about that often. Was she right? Did his elevation require her destruction, or had they both been caught in a system that turned people against each other for sport and profit? He didn't have answers, just tools and problems to fix. The real change came slowly in small ways. Apex started hiring mechanics alongside engineers. Other companies followed suit. Trade schools partnered with universities. The rigid hierarchy that had separated those who designed from those who built began to blur. Marcus kept working, kept fixing, kept teaching. He turned down book deals, movie offers, speaking engagements that would take him away from his actual work. The world had enough celebrities. It needed more people willing to get their hands dirty. Emma grew up surrounded by engines and algorithms, equally comfortable with both. She learned that innovation wasn't about choosing between old and new, but about knowing when to use which. By 13, she held 3 patents, all for improvements that made existing technology more accessible to repair and maintain. "You're going to change the world," Marcus told her one evening as they worked together in their garage, the same kind of space where he'd started with Linda. "No," Emma said, adjusting a fuel injector with practiced precision. "I'm just going to fix it, one part at a time." Marcus smiled, thinking of Linda, of how proud she'd be of their daughter. The girl who'd lost her mother too young had become someone who understood that loss could either break you or teach you to build better. 5 years after the Phoenix incident, Marcus received an unexpected letter. It was from Victoria, written from federal prison. He almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. "Marcus, I'm writing not to apologize. We both know that would be meaningless, but to tell you something you deserve to know. The foreign backing the elaborate plan, even my hatred of you, all of it was real. But so was my belief that the system needed to be destroyed. The only difference between us is that you found a way to reform it from within, while I tried to burn it all down. You asked once why I targeted you specifically. The truth is I recognize myself in you, someone brilliant held back by circumstances beyond their control. I thought if I pushed you hard enough, you'd join me in tearing everything down. Instead, you built something better. I have 7 more years to serve. When I get out, I won't have money, reputation, or power. But I'll have knowledge and hands that remember how to work. Maybe that's enough to start over the right way this time. Don't respond to this letter. Don't forgive me. Just know that the mechanic won more than the race you won. The argument about what really matters. V. Marcus read the letter twice, then filed it away. Redemption wasn't his to give or withhold. Victoria would have to find her own path, just as he'd found his. The story could have ended there, the hero victorious, the villain defeated, lessons learned all around. But life wasn't a story with neat endings. It was an engine that kept running, needing constant maintenance, occasional overhauls, and someone willing to listen when it made strange noises. Marcus kept listening, kept working, kept teaching Emma and others that every person had value, every skill mattered. And sometimes the most important fixes happened not in boardrooms or courtrooms, but in garages where people still believed that broken things could be made whole. The titanium wrench sat on his desk, no longer carried, but never forgotten. It had become a symbol not of his victory, but of something simpler. The power of tools in willing hands, the dignity of work done well, and the truth that fixing things, real things, mattered more than all the money and power in the world. Because in the end, Marcus Chen wasn't famous for humiliating a CEO or exposing corporate corruption or winning an impossible race. He was famous for something much simpler and much harder. He'd fixed something everyone else thought was irreparably broken, the belief that ordinary people could change the world, and that more than any trophy or title was his real superpower. Years passed. Emma went to MIT, but she spent her summers working in garages, her hands as comfortable with grease as they were with equations. She built things that worked, that lasted, that could be fixed by normal people with normal tools. Marcus aged his hands, becoming arthritic, his back protesting the years bent over engines. But he kept working, training the next generation, teaching them that knowledge came in many forms, and wisdom often wore coveralls. He never remarried, though there were opportunities. Linda's memory wasn't a chain, but a compass, always pointing him toward what mattered: integrity, hard work, and the belief that everyone deserved to be heard. The automotive industry changed slowly but genuinely. Safety became paramount. Practical knowledge was valued alongside theoretical. The divide between white-collar and blue-collar blurred until it almost disappeared. And somewhere in federal prison, Victoria Sterling worked in the motor pool fixing government vehicles. Her hands finally learning what her mind had always dismissed, that there was honor in honest work genius, in simplicity and redemption, in the willingness to start over. She would be released eventually, her debt to society paid. What she did then would be her choice. Marcus had given her an example. Whether she chose to follow it or not was up to her. But that was another story for another time. This story, the story of a mechanic who fixed more than cars, a daughter who learned that love was the best tool, and a wrench that became a symbol of quiet revolution. This story ended not with grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but with work. Marcus Chen went to work every morning, fixed what was broken, taught what he knew, and went home to his daughter. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't legendary, it was just life lived with purpose and without apology, and sometimes that was the most revolutionary thing of all. 10 years had passed since Victoria Sterling's imprisonment, and the world had changed in ways Marcus never could have imagined. The automotive industry had undergone a complete transformation, but the real changes ran deeper in boardrooms, where mechanics now sat beside executives in schools, where practical skills were valued equally with theoretical knowledge, and in millions of small garages where people fixed things with dignity and pride. Marcus stood in his workshop, not Apex's corporate facility, but his own space purchased with savings from a lifetime of honest work. The sign outside read, "Chen's Garage, where everything gets fixed." It was smaller than the empire he'd once run with Linda, but it was his, built without compromise or corporate politics. Emma, now 21 and fresh from MIT with dual degrees in mechanical and electrical engineering, worked beside him. She'd had offers from every major tech company in the world, but she'd chosen to come home to work with her hands alongside her father. "Dad, you need to see this," she said, holding up her tablet with a concerned expression. The headline made Marcus's blood run cold. Victoria Sterling released early mysterious benefactor posts billion-dollar bail. The article was sparse on details, but the implications were clear. Someone with serious money wanted Victoria free, and that never meant anything good. "She served 8 years, Emma said quietly. "Model prisoner, apparently. Taught automotive repair to other inmates, filed 16 patents from prison that she released to the public domain." Marcus set down his wrench, not the titanium one from Emma, which sat in a place of honor on his desk, but a simple steel tool worn smooth by decades of use. "She's different now, he said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "Prison changes people. Or it makes them more careful," Emma countered. "Remember what she said in her letter, that she'd learned from her mistakes, Maybe she learned to hide better, not to be better. Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang. The number was unknown, but somehow he knew who it would be. "Hello, Marcus." Victoria's voice was different, older, rougher, without the polished edges that money and power had once provided. But underneath that brilliant, dangerous mind was still there. "Victoria, I heard you were released." "Released and relocated. I'm back in San Francisco. I wanted you to know, not as a threat, but as a courtesy. We're going to be in the same city again." "What do you want?" "To show you something. Tomorrow noon at the Old Meridian test track. Come alone." That sounds like a trap. Everything sounds like a trap when trust is broken. But Marcus, I've had 8 years to think about traps and victories and what really matters. Just come see what I've built. Then you can decide if I'm still your enemy. The line went dead. Emma looked at her father with worry. "You're not actually going, are you?" Marcus thought about it for a long moment. The smart move was to stay away to let the past remain buried. But something in Victoria's voice, a weariness that matched his own, made him curious. "I have to, if she's planning something I need to know." "Then I'm coming with you." "Emma." "Dad." "I'm not 10 anymore. I'm your partner now in the garage and in whatever this is. We face it together." Marcus looked at his daughter, brilliant, brave, and stubborn as her mother, and nodded. They would go together. The Meridian test track had been abandoned for 5 years, a casualty of the scandal that had destroyed the company. Weeds grew through cracks in the asphalt, and the grandstands were covered in graffiti. It was a monument to corporate ambition brought low. Victoria was waiting in the center of the track, but she wasn't alone. Surrounding her were about 30 people, young and old, different races and backgrounds, but all with the same look of people who worked with their hands. Victoria herself was barely recognizable. Gone was the polished executive. Her hair was gray at the roots, her hands calloused, her clothes simple and functional. She looked like what she'd become, a mechanic. "Thank you for coming," she said as Marcus and Emma approached. "I wanted you to see what your victory created." She gestured to the people around her. "These are my students, former inmates, all of them. People the system threw away just like it once threw you away, Marcus. I've been teaching them what I learned, not the corporate games or the manipulation, but the real skills. How to fix things, how to build, how to matter." An older black woman stepped forward. "Ms. Sterling taught me to rebuild transmissions. I was in for theft stealing to feed my kids. Now I've got a job lined up at Ford. My kids are proud of me instead of ashamed." A young Latino man added, "She didn't just teach us mechanics. She taught us that we weren't worthless just because we'd made mistakes, that we could build something better." Marcus studied Victoria's face, looking for the angle, the manipulation. But all he saw was exhaustion and something that might have been genuine remorse. "Why?" he asked simply. Victoria laughed, but it was hollow, without her old sharp edge. "Because you were right about everything. The system, the value of practical knowledge, the importance of every person. I spent 3 years in prison hating you for being right. The next 5 I spent trying to become someone who could deserve being right too." She walked over to a covered vehicle at the edge of the track. "But I also wanted to show you this." She pulled off the cover, revealing a car unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. It was beautiful in its simplicity. Clean lines exposed mechanical elements that were functional rather than decorative, designed to be understood and repaired by anyone with basic knowledge. "The Phoenix 3, Victoria said. "But I call it the Prometheus. Built entirely by ex-inmates using recycled parts and open-source designs. It costs $15,000 to build and can be maintained with tools from any hardware store. It's my apology to the world technology that empowers instead of enslaves." Emma walked around the car, her engineer's eye taking in every detail. "This is brilliant," she said quietly. "It's everything modern cars should be: efficient, repairable, accessible." "Your daughter has your eye for truth," Victoria said to Marcus, "though I suspect she got that from her mother too." The mention of Linda made Marcus tense, but Victoria raised her hand peacefully. "I know I used your wife's death against you. That was unforgivable. But I need you to know something: the information about the Stanford trial was real. I've spent the last 3 years of my sentence working with lawyers to expose similar cases. 17 families have received settlements because of the precedent your case set. Linda's death meant something, Marcus. It changed things. Marcus felt tears threatening the old wound still capable of fresh pain. Emma took his hand, grounding him in the present. "What do you want from us?" Emma asked, her voice steady, where Marcus's would have wavered. "Nothing," Victoria said. "I wanted you to see that your victory wasn't just over me, it was for everyone like your father who'd been dismissed and ignored. I'm not asking for forgiveness or friendship. I'm just asking you to know that the mechanic won more than a race. You won the war for what matters." She turned to walk away, then stopped. "Oh, and Marcus, that mysterious benefactor who posted my bail. It was a collective thousands of small donations from mechanics, janitors, line workers. People who believed that if I could change, anyone could. I'm not sure if that's justice or irony, but it's what I have to work with." As Victoria and her students prepared to leave, one more person emerged from the group, someone Marcus hadn't expected to see. Derek Morrison. The former lead engineer looked healthier than he had in years, the arrogance replaced with something approaching humility. "Chen," he said simply, "I owe you an apology. Several, actually. You tried to help at the end. Too little, too late. But Victoria found me after her release, gave me a chance to do better. I've been teaching the engineering side while she handles the practical. Turns out when you combine both without ego getting in the way, you create something special." Marcus looked at the group. Former enemies, former prisoners, former nobodies all working together to build something that mattered. It was everything he'd fought for achieved not through corporate mandate, but through individual choice and collective effort. "The Prometheus," Marcus said to Victoria. "You're going to produce it." "We already are. Small-scale local manufacturing, completely open source. No patents, no corporate structure, just people building cars for people. It's not about money anymore, Marcus. It's about proving that your way, the mechanic's way, was right all along." That evening, Marcus and Emma worked in their garage in comfortable silence, processing what they'd seen. Finally, Emma spoke. "She's changed." "Maybe, or maybe she's just evolved her game." "Does it matter?" Emma asked. "If the result is good, does the motivation matter?" Marcus considered this. "Your mother would say that redemption isn't about the past, it's about choosing better in the present." "Then maybe we should judge Victoria by what she builds now, not what she destroyed before." The wisdom of youth, Marcus thought, or perhaps the wisdom of someone who hadn't been personally burned by Victoria's previous incarnation. A month later, the first Prometheus cars began appearing on San Francisco's streets. They were unglamorous, functional vehicles that did exactly what they promised, provided reliable, fixable transportation for people who needed it. The automotive press largely ignored them, but mechanics everywhere paid attention. Marcus found himself defending Victoria in conversation, something he never thought he'd do. "She's creating something that matters," he told Richard Blackstone during a rare lunch meeting. "Maybe not for Apex's bottom line, but for real people." "You trust her?" Blackstone asked. "I trust the work. The work doesn't lie." 3 months after Victoria's release, something unexpected happened. A major automotive manufacturer, Toyota, announced they were licensing the Prometheus design not to profit from it, but to produce it at scale for developing nations. The announcement came with a shock. Victoria had been hired as a consultant, not for her business acumen, but for her practical knowledge. The press conference was surreal. Victoria Sterling. Once the epitome of corporate excess, standing in work clothes beside Toyota's CEO, discussing how to make transportation accessible to billions who'd been priced out of mobility. Ms. Sterling's journey from CEO to mechanic has taught her something valuable. The CEO said that innovation isn't always about adding features, sometimes it's about removing barriers. But the real test came 6 months later. Emma had been working on her own project, a modification to the Prometheus design that would make it run on multiple fuel sources, including cooking oil and agricultural waste. It was brilliant, the kind of innovation that could change everything for rural communities worldwide. She needed help to implement it at scale. The person with the most relevant experience was Victoria. "Absolutely not," Marcus said when Emma suggested it. "Dad, she's the only one who understands both the engineering and the distribution challenges. And she's proven she's changed. She destroyed our lives once. I won't let her near you." It was their first real fight as business partners. Emma stormed out of the garage and Marcus was left alone with his fears and Linda's memory. That night, he visited Linda's grave, something he did less frequently now but still needed in moments of crisis. "She wants to work with Victoria," he told the headstone. "Our daughter wants to trust the woman who tried to destroy us. What would you do?" The cemetery was quiet except for distant traffic. But Marcus knew what Linda would say, that holding on to anger was like holding on to hot metal. It only burned the one gripping it. The next morning, he found Emma at her workbench designing modifications with the focused intensity she'd inherited from both parents. "If you work with her," Marcus said, "I'm part of it, non-negotiable. We both work with her, or neither of us does." Emma looked up, surprised. "You're okay with it?" "No, but I trust you. And maybe it's time to see if Victoria's redemption is real or just another performance." The collaboration was awkward at first. Victoria's workshop was in Oakland in a converted warehouse that had once built weapons for World War II. Now it built hope for people who'd been written off by society. "The Chen family," Victoria said when they arrived. "Together. Linda would be proud." "Don't," Marcus warned. "You don't get to invoke her memory." "You're right. I apologize." They worked in tense cooperation, Emma's innovation bridging the gap between Marcus's distrust and Victoria's expertise. The multi-fuel system was complex but achievable, requiring both theoretical understanding and practical problem-solving. Watching Victoria work was revelatory. The woman who'd once refused to dirty her hands now moved with the confidence of someone who'd spent years learning from failure. She listened to Emma's ideas without condescension, offered suggestions without demanding credit, and when Marcus corrected her approach, she accepted it without argument. "Prison was my real education," she said during a break. 3 years in the motor pool fixing buses and trucks with minimal resources. You learn humility when a broken alternator means 30 people can't get to their jobs. "Humility," Marcus repeated. "That's a word I never thought I'd hear from you." "There are a lot of words I never thought I'd use. Sorry is another one. But I am Marcus. Sorry for what I did to you, to Emma, to everyone I stepped on while climbing a ladder that led nowhere." Emma, ever the peacemaker, shifted the conversation to technical matters. But something had changed in the workshop's atmosphere. The past wasn't forgotten, but it was no longer the only thing in the room. 2 weeks into the collaboration, they had a breakthrough. Emma's multi-fuel system worked, but it required a component that would add $5,000 to the cost, defeating the purpose of an affordable car. "We need a different approach," Emma said, frustrated after another failed test. Victoria studied the problem, then looked at Marcus. "What would you do if this was 1990 and you didn't have modern materials?" Marcus thought about it, then smiled the first genuine smile he'd given Victoria in over a decade. "I'd use mechanical valve timing instead of electronic control. More complex to build, simpler to maintain." "Show me," Victoria said, and for the first time it felt like they were just 3 engineers solving a problem, not enemies forced into proximity. They worked through the night, Emma bridging the generational gap between Marcus's analog knowledge and Victoria's digital expertise. By dawn, they had a prototype that worked ugly, held together with zip ties and hope, but functional. "This is it," Emma said, exhausted but exhilarated. "This could change everything for millions of people." Victoria looked at the mess of parts that represented salvation for communities worldwide. "It's beautiful," she said, and meant it. The multi-fuel Prometheus launched 3 months later, not with fanfare, but with quiet efficiency. Units were shipped to farming communities in India villages and Africa islands in the Pacific, places where a car that could run on whatever was available meant the difference between isolation and connection. Marcus received letters from around the world, photos of families with their Prometheus vehicles, stories of businesses made possible, lives changed. He kept them in a box next to Linda's photos, proof that good could come from pain. Victoria never sought credit for her role. In interviews, she directed attention to Emma's innovation and Marcus's practical wisdom. It was so unlike the old Victoria that Marcus found himself genuinely confused. One evening, as they finished installing an improvement Emma had designed, Victoria asked, "Do you think Linda would have forgiven me?" It was the question Marcus had been dreading and expecting in equal measure. "I don't know. he said honestly. Linda believed in redemption, but she also believed in consequences. You've faced the consequences. Whether that equals redemption, that's not for me to decide. But you've decided for yourself. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, watching Emma explain the modification to Victoria's students, her face animated with the joy of teaching. I've decided that holding on to hatred hurts Emma more than it hurts you. I've decided that the work matters more than the past. I've decided that maybe, just maybe, people can change. That's not forgiveness. No, Marcus agreed. But it's a start. 2 years passed. The Prometheus project expanded, creating jobs for thousands of former inmates who Victoria trained. Emma's innovations earned her recognition as one of MIT's most impactful alumni under 30. Marcus's garage became a pilgrimage site for mechanics' worldwide proof that practical knowledge could change the world. Victoria kept her distance except for necessary collaboration, respecting the boundaries Marcus had set. But slowly those boundaries shifted. Not forgiveness, not friendship, but something like professional respect. Then came the news that changed everything again. Richard Blackstone called Marcus personally. I'm retiring. The board wants you to take over as CEO, not as a figurehead, but as a real leader. The company needs someone who understands both innovation and integrity. I've turned this down before. This is different. You wouldn't be alone. Emma would be Chief Innovation Officer. And Marcus, we want to acquire the Prometheus project, not to kill it or corporatize it, but to scale it properly. Bring manufacturing in-house, ensure quality, make it available worldwide. That's Victoria's project, which is why she'd come too, Director of Accessible Technology. I know the history, Marcus, but think about the future. The three of you together could revolutionize not just automotive, but manufacturing itself. Marcus's first instinct was to refuse. But he thought about the letters from grateful families about Emma's dreams of innovation that helped everyone about Linda's belief that broken things could be fixed. I need to discuss it with Emma and Victoria. The meeting took place in Marcus's garage, neutral ground for all of them. Emma was enthusiastic but cautious. Victoria was shocked into silence, a rarity that would have been satisfying if it wasn't so clearly genuine. You want me at Apex, she finally managed. After everything, I want the Prometheus project to succeed, Marcus said. You built something that matters. It deserves resources we can provide. But this only works if we can truly work together. No games, no manipulation, just the work. Victoria looked between father and daughter, these people she'd tried to destroy, who were now offering her a future. I need to tell you both something, she said. The mysterious benefactor who posted my bail. It wasn't thousands of small donors. It was one person who insisted on anonymity. She pulled out a document, hand shaking slightly. It was Richard Blackstone. He said Marcus had taught him that redemption was possible for anyone willing to work for it. He gave me a second chance because of your example. The garage was silent except for the tick of cooling metal from a car Emma had been working on. Did you know? Marcus asked Emma. No, but it makes sense. You changed more than just Victoria Dad. You changed how an entire industry thinks about value and worth. Marcus stood and walked to his workbench where the titanium wrench sat in its place of honor. He picked it up, feeling its familiar weight, remembering the day Emma had given it to him, the inscription, Dad's Magic, barely visible but always there. Linda used to say that fixing things wasn't about making them perfect, he said. It was about making them work again. Maybe that applies to people too. He turned to Victoria. One condition. We tell the truth. All of it. The manipulation, the redemption, the collaboration. No corporate spinning, no PR management. If we're going to do this, we do it honestly. That could destroy all of us, Victoria said. The full truth about what I did, what you went through, what we've built, since people might not understand. Then we make them understand, Emma said. By showing them what's possible, when enemies become allies, when the system changes to value everyone, when fixing things matters more than maintaining appearances. Victoria extended her hand to Marcus, not the manicured hand of a CEO from years ago, but the calloused hand of someone who'd learned to work. Marcus looked at it for a long moment, then shook it. Partners, he said. God help us all.